Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerd things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? Both of us a little sleepy going into this episode because we had a lazy morning and really just woke up before recording. So bear with us if any of that ends up coming through. But otherwise, hope you enjoy the show. If you do enjoy what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast everywhere you can. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Yeah. So let's just dive right on in. Cam, last time we talked, you had started playing through and were enjoying Doom Eternal. Sounds like, based on our conversation, you have finished it at this point. So how was Doom Eternal for you?
Yeah, no, Doom Eternal's awesome. I beat it. It's it was so cool. Um, there is just so much about it that I loved. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it controlled so well. Like the controls on it are so tight. Um, I never had to it was just sorry. Let me go ahead and just kind of put my thoughts into a little bit more in a little bit more order rather than just like thinking about running around and just shooting demons.
I mean, that is the Doom Eternal experience. So.
It is, but like there I do have some well versed thoughts in it. I really have appreciated I appreciated the heck out of Doom Eternal 2016, or not Doom Eternal, Doom 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I thought like that was in my top 10 games of that year. I thought it was phenomenal. It kind of came under the radar for a lot of people until they like ended up picking it up for cheap or whatever, and then it kind of blew up again. Um, it's such an incredible um, game that is the culmination of a lot of really great decisions that were made in Doom 2016. Kind of the idea of, hey, let's actually give like a cool kind of like story that is going on around the Slayer, but is not the actual like driving like not their actual like attention what they're trying to do. And when you find out why, you find out how that happened, and it's really good. But I digress. It's just there's something really great going on. Like this game has so much lore that I have loved delving into, and it's not just a matter of like, oh, it's cool, it's lore. It's this is stuff that's easy to digest and pick apart and find what your favorite stuff is. Um, I certainly have enjoyed the heck out of it as you know as somebody who really enjoys lore. The idea that the Slayer is like the fact that it's like, hey, by the way, yes, this Slayer is not only is he like this cool mythical figure, he's the same person you were playing in the original Doom video game. Um, he made it to the center of Mars and got transported to AO and just had an opportunity to do it for himself. And it's sorry, when I say do it for himself, I mean like so he gets taken into sorry, not AO, it gets taken to like sorry, let me go ahead and back up a bit. So the Slayer that you play as in the Doom 2016 Doom Eternal is actually a former Space Marine from the original Doom game. He survived the demonic onslaught, shut down the gate to hell, was sucked into a gate to a different place, and basically like took on this idea of his a singular obsession. Oh, I should have kept that muted. Oh, do. But you need to stay quiet. You. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Uh, oh, that's actually something I need to respond to right away. Cool beans. Which honestly, I understand her concern because even though we're recording at 1:30 after yesterday, who can tell how long our podcast will last? Um, like the idea of Doom Eternal being like this, the idea of this cycle that the Slayer has kind of fallen into, as the only survivor from his team on Mars to being like introduced to this world of a warrior culture. It brings into this different like these different factions outside of just like what is hell, and kind of answers that with giving you like a different look at how like hell and um, these other species that have kind of like just it's so good. Like I don't want to spoil anything. It's worth playing through. And I just say spoil, even though like there's not like the story's there, and it's really good. But like if you don't want to, you can just like keep skipping over cutscenes and whatnot. Final boss is like an absolute awesome like combination of like where the final boss is like a stage that you have to play through and beat. Like they're part of the level, while at the same time it being like a clash of like an epic clash that like deserves to be happening. Now, to kind of follow up from last week when we talked about it with Marauders, because I hadn't encountered one yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was one of the more interesting things for me because I understand why people would be so frustrated by that, but I also found the challenge so endearing. It was a giant pain. I hated having to do it sometimes. I hated having like a room full of enemies trying to murder me while this guy is like chasing me around and doing that. But there were so many times where I felt like I don't know if I could have beat the last boss without having to deal with the Marauders throughout the entire game. Um, it's so good. Like the game is so good and it plays so well and controls so well. But I also understand if you people met a Marauder and they're like, hey, I hate this and I don't ever want to do it again. It's like I understand. That's totally fine. Like I can be a masochist when it comes to these sorts of games. Um, so I don't like when you with what you said last week, Trevor. I totally understand.
Yeah, I hated encountering the Marauders like throughout the game. Um, None more so than there was. It stands out to me because I spent way too long trying to do it. But there was like a challenge in one of the rooms because like you have all those kind of like the unlockables and all the like the little bonus things in each level. And there was one where it was like it was a timed challenge, and you had to kill a few enemies, including like two Marauders in like 20 seconds or something like that. Something
Jeez,
insane,
okay.
insane like that. It was like it was a big old pain in the butt, and like I just attempted it over and over and over again. And the problem in those like in-game challenges is like you don't like if you fail, you just have to like go and restart it. You don't get your ammo back, you don't get your health back, anything like that. So I just like kept dying or I ran out of like ways to like replenish my health or anything like that. So I was like just constantly trying it and having to basically attempt it on fumes and just hope for a flawless run, which I eventually finally got and was able to beat it before because that was how I was playing the game. I was basically making sure I was 100%ing every level before moving on to the next one.
Oh, okay.
So it was a big old pain in the butt, especially that one where it was like you had to kill a Marauder and then that like created more people to spawn into the encounter, I think. And so and including a second Marauder, and it was just like I hate this so much. Why is this a thing? Why did they make that? Like it is among the hardest challenges I found in that game was that. Second maybe too, like because I wasn't that the final boss for me was difficult, but it was very time consuming just because there were so many different like pieces to it. And I found that frustrating because that was another case where I was constantly having to like just jump around the map and run away from things and then try and like finally kill something to get ammo to shoot at the boss to like weaken and whittle that down. So yeah, it was a like I remember that being a big old time suck. But I remember like the lead up to the final boss being just like brutal in terms of like enemies just like coming at me from every direction, so I was just dying left and right. Even again, as we talked about last week, on baby ass baby mode, and that like it left the game with a much more sour taste in my mouth than 2016 Doom did.
Mm.
And maybe that'll fade over time, and I'll like because it happens a lot where I hate like the final boss encounters in so many games. I think we see like where the final boss is just radically different from everything else we've done in the game to that point. That it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but eventually that fades. So I'm sure with more time and distance between it, Doom Eternal will be like more fondly remembered for me. And for me, like really was I did it like enjoy it right up there with 2016. It didn't have like the freshness of 2016 anymore, but I appreciated like more than I think a lot of people that were talking about the game at launch. I appreciated like the platforming elements to it, not only because it made like the platforming around the world more fun and stuff, but because I really appreciated how it just added to the movement through the combat arenas, and how I had like all these extra tools now to try and like run around in a battle, as opposed to just kind of running and gunning like 2016 was.
Yeah, I have to say I really enjoyed the variety of ways that you could do things in Eternal versus kind of the uh, rinse and repeat method of 2016. Um, yeah, no, I was playing on normal mode, or like hurt me plenty, I think is what it's
Mm-hmm.
called. And like playing through it was tough. I will say the something that I didn't touch on when I was talking about the lore, but the idea of these, like, honestly, reading through the lore and like reading through that, I'm like, this is actually like this really epic and awesome story. And so something I really love that they did in this game is you don't need to read that to understand like, hey, like the Doomslayer is this guy who's here to kill demons. That's what he does, rip and tear. Uh, Rip and tear. So good. But like that's his deal. It's like you can kind of ignore like the story about it. You don't have to get into it. But if you really get into it, you've realized that like there's this really cool like 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 level of like conspiracy and like epic. It's like an epic space fantasy almost. It's so cool. The entire idea of the Sentinels, the um, the makers, the the demon like hell as like what is hell, and the idea behind it is just so fascinating and so brilliant. Um,
One of
the
the
story behind it is awesome.
Yeah, one like again, I'm not the guy that like digs into the codex and dives into, but they did put a lot more of the lore that would have been like just codex stuff in the last game. They did put a lot of that more front and center. So even I was able to kind of get all of that stuff just through the main game. But one of the things I loved is it still has that like Doom sensibility of like right out the gate in like that first level you're playing. It kind of sets up like, oh, there are like these three, kind of big bads scattered across Earth that are really wreaking havoc, and you need to take out all three of them to kind of progress on. And like after by the end of the first level, you've already just like ripped the head off of one of them, and it's just like, oh, okay, so this is what this is gonna be. It's definitely like, yep, you are still the unstoppable force. It's just a matter of time of getting to these guys before you're gonna take them out. Because it's like I'm pretty sure with each of them, like those deaths all happen within cutscenes. Because those aren't the fighters, those aren't the warriors. Those are just like the, whatever the bishops or something in the hierarchy of their covenants.
They're called the Hell Priests.
Yeah, there you go.
They're basically like
That was close.
yeah, they're the physical manifestations of the link to the portal that binds it to Earth. And it's interesting because to talk about that actually, like one of them you literally just like stumble upon like at the very beginning of the game. It's like
Yep.
you have to kill these 3 hell priests, and you're like, okay, cool. And you like walk through, and you're like just in this level, and you're like, I don't know where I'm at. And then you like walk into a room, and one of them's just like hanging out by a fireplace, and you're like, how convenient. Murder, take his head. When you find out actually like who these hell, like when you look in the codex and you read up on like who these hell priests are, you understand like the depth of like how terrible these people are. Which makes like whenever they grovel all the worse. Especially the last one. The last one is like there's something so cool about the Sentinels, the Night Sentinels, um, the Slayer himself, because the Slayer literally walks and like stumbles into the Sentinel's world, and like it's so cool. There's something just so really cool about the what they've done with the story behind Doom Eternal. I highly suggest, if you have any interest whatsoever in this game, do like play it. And if you really wanted to learn more about it, like there's a guy who pops up in just like one cutscene, and you'd be like, oh well, that's weird. Like, what's the point of that guy? He gives you like something, and you don't ever. It doesn't come up until like the second to last level. Um, and like it's super. It actually turns out that it's super important. But if you read the codex, you'd understand like who that guy is, why it's so important that he gives you that. It's not just like this little simple device that you had to go pick up for like insurance or anything. It actually has importance to it. So I loved that. Like I loved going back through the codex after beating the game and just going through that. I have to say the Fortress of Doom is, as a hub world, is phenomenal. I loved it. Gosh, like it was just so much fun running around that thing, and just like running to different places to unlock different things, different abilities, just different stuff, and it's just so great.
What do you think of the weapons this game?
I loved them.
Yeah.
I will say the weapons that I used the least was, I'm trying to think here. Weapon I used the least was probably like, actually, you know what? I used all of them pretty consistently because you kind of need to.
Yeah, a lot of them, they definitely like they'll give you enemy types that it's like, hey, like I typically wouldn't use the plasma rifle, but if they throw out an enemy with a shield at you, it's like, well, I need to use the plasma rifle to bust that shield and get to the enemy, so I guess I'll go and use that one. So yeah, they did a good job of like kind of forcing the like versatility of the weapons.
Yeah, there was they also did a really awesome thing with mods. Like the weapon mods actually came into play. It wasn't just like, hey, I want to play it with this play style.
Yeah.
I found myself swapping mods quite a bit. With the only exception being mods I didn't swap were the shield mod for the railgun and the grenade mod for the shotgun.
Yeah. The grenade mod on the shotgun was like clutch, especially
Also,
for those like arachnid brain dudes.
100%. Oh, also like the sword, the crucible, such a cool weapon.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so
I liked where that, like, you already feel pretty powerful, and then that comes into the game, and it's like, oh, this just like will cleave any enemy, as long as you have like the ammo for it. Basically, I was like, that's really cool. Really enjoyed that. And yeah,
chainsaw, getting like moving around arenas to pick up extra gas canisters in order to one shot powerful enemies with your chainsaw. Awesome,
yep,
awesome
yep,
decision.
yeah. I loved the like. I feel like this was in 2016 as well. I just didn't remember it as well. But the like upgrading weapons was not. It was a combination of like you had to go find the upgrade things in the maps, or in completing challenges, and you could choose what guns you wanted to upgrade. But then there was also like if you want like the full power and like the extra perk on this gun, you have to like complete this challenge of shoot the turrets off of 20 of those arachnid brain guys, or that kind of stuff. Like was it like use the grapple hook on the shotgun to just mow through 50 enemies or something like that. Like I loved just kind of like digging in and being like, okay, what if I'm gonna be using this gun for a little bit, what is the challenge I need to do to try and like make it even stronger for me, and just kind of going through and doing those challenges in addition to like because there's those challenges tied to the weapons, and then there's like a few challenges in each level tied to like the enemies on that level. It's like, hey, there's gonna be some of the the big eyeball guys. And I'm sure you know all these characters, all the names and everything. But and it's like, okay, so yeah, you're gonna need to like
Oh, I
glory
had
kill like 3 of these guys or something like that.
I had nicknames for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the arachnid
But
brains I called bitch brains. Uh,
okay,
the floating eye guys I just called them boomers because I would shotgun one in the mouth with the grenade, and then it like was an auto kill. So I literally used them as like imagine like health packs basically. That's what I used them for.
mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Marauders I just call marauders because like that's just like if there's an enemy type that deserves it, it's that one.
Yeah.
Um,
Cacodemons is the eyeball guys. And I was like, I know that's like a famous name in the thing, and like especially because people will say like cocodemons or something like that, and it becomes even more like he immature kind of thing. But I was like, I know the names of those things, but I had to definitely Google it to be reminded.
no, the reason I call arachnid brains bitch brains is because um like they're just like because the way their auto turret fires, it's just like you're in the middle of like fighting something or running around, and all of a sudden you just get like hit by like 12 bullets of like 12 shots from it, and it's like, oh, you bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like this audible like, I hate you. Let's see. Fodder I just called like random enemies that I could one shot with a chainsaw fodder.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's like they're like, I just had nicknames for a lot of the demons.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a great old time with it.
I did indeed. I did indeed. I think that Doom Eternal is this year is like chock full of really incredible games, but I think like Doom Eternal really stands out to me as like a really great game from this year. So
Yeah, it's definitely uh, it'll be interesting come game of the year time, especially like if people do like go back and pick it up on sale or something, because that game did come out right at the beginning of quarantine times, right alongside Animal Crossing, which obviously dominated the conversation for months. And Doom Eternal, being more of a one and done kind of game, very much got like left in the shadows. So maybe if the DLC comes out by the end of the year, I don't remember if that's been dated or not yet. But if we get that and that kind of like breathes new life into the game, if we'll see if that makes its way back into the conversation for game of the year stuff, or if it just kind of ends up in the best shooter category come year end. We will see. So on my side of things, one of the things I've not, I mean, I've been playing more Marvel's Avengers, so I don't really have anything new to report on that front. But I did sit down and watch the new to Netflix movie Enola Holmes, which is basically featuring Millie Bobby Brown as the further fictionalized off of a fictional character sister of Sherlock Holmes. And Henry Cavill plays Sherlock in this interpretation. Helena Bonham Carter's in there, and it's just it's a fun Holmesian kind of film. Don't really have probably too much to say about it. Millie Bobby Brown is very like cute and charming in the role. For those that don't know, she was 11 in Stranger Things, or she is 11 in Stranger Things. So this is kind of another Netflix opportunity for her. And yeah, she very much has a lot of those same detective traits that her big brother has. The like loose plot is basically while Sherlock and Mycroft like went off to London years ago, Enola has been raised at home in their manor by her more eccentric mother, played by Helena Bonham Carter, and she's been, she has learned fighting and chemistry and deduction, and like she's read every book in their library, and she's been training to be basically a detective. She idolizes Sherlock. She like pulls every clipping she can find of his cases and stuff.
Because he's the cool older brother, not the lame older brother like Minecraft.
Minecraft sucks.
Minecraft always sucks. But Minecraft
yeah.
is it depends. There's two types of Minecrafts you get in Holmes Tales. One is either he is a government patsy, stuck up, stick up his ass kind of figure.
Or he's that one in this. He is that one.
That is very much the modern interpretation of Mycroft Holmes. Classic Holmesian tellings. Mycroft is actually a absolute slothful, slothful human being. He's fat. He is lazy. He his entire thing where he tries to get because in traditional Holmesian tales, Holmes is up for any case whatsoever. It's if it can intrigue him, he's into it. And so he's much more active, and he's not quote unquote antisocial. I'm thinking Sherlock style is what a lot of modern interpretations kind of are looking at here. But
yeah,
the idea is Mycroft in traditional Holmesian tales is he's loathsome because he's so unbelievably lazy. Because here's the thing. Sherlock admits to and understands that Mycroft, in traditional Holmesian tales, Mycroft is leaps and bounds smarter than Sherlock. But his lack of urgency and lack of any sense of he's slothful, he's sloppy, he's just a disgusting human being, and he very much takes on just these traits of a slothful blob of a human being. So in modern tellings, they use this stuck-up government goon versus traditional Holmesian tellings where Mycroft is this enormously brilliant, far beyond even Sherlock level of genius, but he's so unbelievably lazy that you hate him anyway. He doesn't have the charm and because the thing about Sherlock is engaged with everything. In classic Holmesian tellings, he's very much he practices fencing, he practices the violin, he does anything he can to keep his mind and body active at all times, because he is filled to the brim with energy. Watson often, in classic Holmesian tales, Watson complains about in modern Holmesian tellings, Watson's oh, it's so hard to keep up with Sherlock, and because he's so brilliant and smart. In traditional Holmesian tellings, it's hard to keep up with Sherlock because he's so full of energy. He's boundless. Also, Sherlock in traditional and classic Holmesian tellings is also somebody who sniffs a lot of cocaine.
Yeah, that doesn't really come up in this one.
Yeah, no,
this one definitely, with Enola being a 16-year-old girl, definitely is geared towards children. There was a lot of what I classified as Dora the Explorer moments, where Millie Bobby Brown just straight to the camera talks to the audience and says, "What should we do?" or something like that. And it's not like she's waiting for a response from the audience where she's that Blue's Clues kind of thing. But it is she's telling the audience this story, and a lot of times she will basically use the audience as her own sounding board, in the same way that Sherlock uses Watson as a sounding board or something like that. And so it there's a weird tonal disconnect at some points in there because of that, and it took me out of it. But it was still it's still a fun little mystery tale. She basically goes on the search. The family all gets brought back together after the mom disappears, and she sets out to try and find where her mother has gone, because it's not there's no signs of struggle or anything. So they all kind of deduce that she wasn't kidnapped or anything. She left of her own accord, and so now Enola is trying to figure out why. Sherlock wants to help Enola out there, and while Minecraft just wants to make Enola his ward and basically put her into a reform school with Fiona Shaw, who, as soon as she popped up, my first thought wasn't, hey, that's Petunia Dursley. My first thought was, hey, that's the woman from Super Mario Brothers in '93. and I immediately looked that up. I was like, wow, that's a weird thing to be thinking and associating her with. And also just, wow, as bad as Super Mario Brothers 3 is, it is still very much ingrained in my brain, clearly.
You mean the
But it's
Super
also
Mario Brothers
weird,
film?
yes, sorry, the Super Mario Brothers movie, yes, sorry. But it's also weird that I never, like, pieced together that Petunia Dursley was that character. Like, it wasn't until seeing her in this that I was like, hey, Super Mario Brothers. And then looking through IMDb, and it was like, oh, and also Petunia Dursley. Okay, yeah. But yes, Super Mario Brothers, I was right. She that was Fiona Shaw. So, but yeah, she has she basically plays like the strict governess, kind of a leader of a boarding school that's going to be a struggle for Enola to deal with. But Enola also gets in the quest for her mom. She also gets wrapped up in this case surrounding this Marquess, who's basically gone. He's on the lam while somebody's out trying to kill him, and so she has to basically try and figure out that case too. And it's a cute little like there's a clearly a budding little romance built into that. As I understand it, like this is based on a book series about Enola Holmes that I believe the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle is basically is trying to like take down. And it's like, hey, like it's the character is in the like public domain at this point. So if somebody wants to go and create a new story and say that Sherlock now has a sister, they can do it. And so Netflix has grabbed onto that. I imagine they'll, if they can, they'll try and keep making a few more movies out of this. Because this is it's a cute little fun mystery kind of 2-hour some odd change, I think, tale, and does a lot of fun setting things up. Henry Cavill's charming in this interpretation of Sherlock. He's much less off-putting than say like Benedict Cumberbatch's version or even like Robert Downey Jr.'s version of Sherlock. He's more just affable, and admittedly like we only really see him interacting with like his family and a couple other people, but Henry Cavill brings a fun energy to the role of Sherlock here. But yeah, it's definitely Millie Bobby Brown's movie, and she's having a great time with it. So shout out to Enola Holmes. Definitely a fun little way to spend a couple of hours on Netflix, if you're not trying to go through and rewatch whatever random sitcom from the last 20 years, like I also am, which we'll dive into in a little bit.
So this is what bothers me about I did not know about the lawsuit. This is what bothers me about it. Arthur Conan Doyle did not like writing Sherlock Holmes. Rather, he wrote Sherlock Holmes as like a fun like adventure thing to do, or like a fun little like detective pieces that he could write. For anybody who doesn't know, like Arthur Conan Doyle was oh shoot, sorry, give me 1 second here.
It's for details while you're pulling this up. The articles seem to be centering around the idea that the reason Enola Holmes is being sued is because they're making Sherlock himself too much of an emotional character, as opposed to the more aloof interpretations that we've seen elsewhere. Yeah,
sorry, 1 second here. Yeah, because I'm trying to think of like what the term is that he was known, like that he practiced.
Arthur Conan Doyle or Sherlock
Arthur
Holmes?
Conan Doyle, yeah. Trying to think here, what is his... So, trying to think here what it was that he was known for. Existentialism, I think is what it is.
Like what his belief system was?
No, he was like the kind of writing that he did.
Oh,
Oh, here we go. Yeah. So he wrote a lot of philosophy. So here's the thing about Arthur Conan Doyle. He did not think that he would be known for Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was like pulp novels that he wrote, like pulp stories he was writing to pass the time and make money, while he wrote these long philosophical essays and entries to try and like explore existentialism. But he was never successful in that route. Um, so for them to be coming after somebody years later saying that he's being too emotional, this like whole thing about this like interpretation of this character, etc. Like like fuck off.
yeah.
Like as an
It's I
estate,
mean,
like it's not like it's like Tolkien's estate. Tolkien Tolkien's estate has been constantly involved with anything regarding Lord of the Rings, anything regarding Tolkien, because there is a deep loving care in that family for this world that uh their patriarch created. Um,
also they like money.
and they like money, sure. Uh, but there is like a deep investment as as an estate because it's made up of his grandchildren, like his children and his grandchildren. Um, like if 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 J.R. Tolkien did not like Lord of the Rings, like he thought it was just like these stupid books that he wrote, and he doesn't understand why people like them, and was instead like trying to like be known for his philosophy. Uh, yeah, like one like that same kind of vein. Like I definitely would feel that way as well. But like Sherlock Holmes belongs in the public domain. That's where it's at. Um, yeah, his estate can fuck off in regards to that.
Yeah. Anyway, I definitely recommend checking out Enola Holmes. It's especially, I would say it's especially like a good like family friendly movie for people to enjoy. Right before we sat down to record. I saw one of my friends who has like a trio of young boys like sat down and watched it and was enjoying it with his kids. Yeah, check out Enola Holmes. I want to throw it back over to you, Cam. You mentioned you picked up JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Eyes of
On
Heaven.
whatever. What is it? Rise of Heaven?
Eyes of Heaven.
Eyes of Heaven. Okay, so tell me about that, especially since I've heard the name JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in terms of like anime, but I know nothing about it outside of the name. So tell me how the game ties into, I guess, the broader JoJo's world.
So JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I have to first explain to you what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is.
Yeah, I figure there's gonna be another half hour, so I can kind of snooze, right?
Haha, very funny. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a epic tale a of two bloodlines that have, or rather, a single bloodline that has been affected by uh, tragedy and curses, and its multiple characters throughout history. Um, it is a series that was created by like a really brilliant young manga artist, and in Japan. Let me go ahead and actually. Sorry. Once again, my lethargy from being napping before we start recording is coming into effect here, uh, which certainly should not be the case because uh, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure deserves better than that.
Okay.
You laugh. You laugh. But let me tell you, Hirohiko Araki deserves much better from me if I'm going to be telling people about his incredible, uh, his incredible stories. So JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is kind of summarized as a long tale about a specific group, like a specific family called the Joestars, as they've been affected by tragedy and curses throughout history. The first So it came out originally in, oh gosh, let me see here. It came out in January of 1987 and is still being published today. It is one of the most influential and important pieces of literature that has come out of Japan. The only reason people don't know about it in the United States is because it is a legal trademark nightmare to try to deal with. The reason being is Iraqi likes to name things after very popular trademarked songs and artists and musicians. Um, like stuff that like litigation would be brought against. So it's been a something of a kind of like legal nightmare to try to figure out how to bring it to the West. But outside of the United States, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is one of the most popular series of all time. It is one of my favorite series of all time. I found out about it when Shonen Jump brought it over to the United States in the form of a little informational thing in the back of one of the early issues of Shonen Jump in America. It's like the story starts off with about Jonathan Joestar and Dio Brando, who are two young men who are tied together because Dio's father saved Jonathan's father after a carriage accident. And so in return for it, when Dio's father dies, he's sent to live with the Joestars. And from the moment they meet, conflict arises. And it's a story of how the story of these two young men intertwine to cast tragedy throughout the history of and future of this family. Each part, they're separated into parts. There's currently 8 parts right now. Each part is dedicated to a different member of the Joestar family. So Jonathan Joestar is part 1, Joseph Joestar is part 2, and there's a reason why I'm going into all of this.
I'm waiting on bated breath.
I know, Trevor. I know. Jotaro Kujo is part 3. Josuke is part 4. Giorno Giovanna is part 5, which is my favorite. Giorno is my favorite JoJo. Part 6 is Jolene Kujo. Part 7 is Johnny Joestar. And part 8 is Josuke. However, it's Jojo Leon is what that part is technically called. The reason why Johnny
Where does Jojo Rabbit come into this?
Jojo Rabbit is unrelated as a property. Actually, that would have been a really cool tie-in. I think about it. The thing is, Jojo Rabbit would have existed around the same time as Joseph Joestar. Huh. He was around in Europe. Here's what it is. Jojo Rabbit is the illegitimate child of... no, he's not. Sorry, that's not fair. Because that's not fair to Jojo Rabbit as a film. Because Jojo Rabbit has a father and there's a sister figure and everything like that. So, So outside of that, let's move into So
Jojo is this line of people with Joe in the name, seemingly.
So yeah, each of them has a way of their name kind of being nicknamed JoJo. Giovanna, for example, Giorno Giovanna is technically Gio, but when you pronounce it with in Italian, it's Jojo.
So how does this all tie into the game?
So the game is a kind of offshoot of So something that you didn't know is that in part 1, Dio Brando becomes a vampire from using what's called a stone mask. Yes. In part 3, he comes back as the main villain again, as a leader of a group of people who have these abilities called stands. Stands are like psychic manifestations of like think of like personas basically. In fact, actually, personas are based off of stands, um, which is like, when I say how influential JoJo is, there is literally a JoJo reference in almost every piece of media. JoJo is like the original like meme as well. Like that, like you want to know where most of the memes come from? Like when it comes to like anime and stuff, it's usually JoJo. Um, the best memes always come from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I digress. Uh, Basically, this takes place in an alternate reality because at the end of part three, Dio is defeated once and for all. In an alternate, like in another dimension, a parallel dimension, Dio successfully wins part three, the fight in part three. He ends up becoming a god figure, basically, in his own world, and becomes aware of alternate dimensions where he didn't win. So, in order to win in those dimensions, he decides to basically invade one of them. And you play as essentially you go through and in order to do this, he's trying to get parts of what's called the Holy Corpse, which is actually the corpse of Jesus Christ, who, you guessed it, as like technically, if people didn't know this, Jesus' name wasn't Jesus; it was actually Joshua. And Joshua was known, and like Jesus was known as the son of Joseph. So yes, Jesus Christ himself is a JoJo. Anyway,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, that makes no sense to anybody. I'm sorry about that. That's just a fun thing. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, I'm all over the place, and it's part of it's lethargy, and part of it's also like, how do I explain this? So anyway, the idea is basically it's an awesome fighting game with all the characters from JoJo. There we go.
Cool. Fighting game, because I had we had not like stumbled upon that yet.
Yep, it's a fighting game.
So if it's like a Dragon Ball's fighters kind of thing, then I'm like, okay, now I have some kind of semblance for this. It's a whole bunch of anime characters that I'm not going to understand at all, battling it out and duking it out. So in terms of like, I'm also curious as to why, it being a fighting game, I needed to know that so and so used a stone mask and became a vampire. Like, why was that a crucial detail you felt I needed to know about this game?
Because Dio as the villain. First off, Dio's one of the best villains of all time because he's like so cartoonishly evil. It's amazing. In fact, this is my challenge. Like, this is. I'm just gonna throw it here, Trevor. You should try to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I appreciate that, and as you were talking, because I wasn't following the story at all from you, I was like, I went to look at the plot summary on like Wikipedia, and I was like, this seems like way too many parts. And it's a thing that's been going on since '87. I don't know if like getting me into Doctor Who had to happen at like a very specific point in time. I don't know if I can jump into something that has that much of a lineage behind it right now, without like feeling overwhelmed. Also, I don't know if I have any current subscriptions to a Crunchyroll or a Funimation kind of thing going on.
That's fair.
So.
That's fair. I will put this out there, and I'll just say this: JoJo's not for everybody. Very much so. It is, and it's not because it's an acquired taste. It's because, and it's not because there's a massive commitment either. Like, you could just watch one part of JoJo and be like, "Oh, that was fine," and like walk away from it. You don't have to be obsessed with it like I am.
I mean, like looking at what I looked at, I was like, okay, I see all the memes going around about how like One Piece is impossible to hop into because it's got so much to it, and I basically immediately felt the same thing of this. I'm like, how, like, from what I've heard about JoJo and like its your legacy or whatever, I like that was very much what I felt here as well.
The thing about it is
that
the parts,
the One Piece effect.
Yeah, the One Piece effect I can understand. One thing I will say is that it's important to note that, for one thing, because JoJo's separated into parts, it's actually a lot easier to get into than I would say One Piece. like the first season of JoJo is, I think, only maybe 8 episodes long. It's not very long. Part two is a little bit longer. Part three is where you start getting like full anime seasons out of it. Part four is the longest. Part five is shorter than that, but has like a really awesome story, and that's all the anime that's come out. Part six, seven, and eight don't have animes
Okay.
as of yet. So
And it does look like it is streamable. At least the series that started in 2012, it looks like is streamable. The first 3 seasons on Hulu.
there you go. Yeah. First,
So,
if it's the first 3 seasons, that's the first 3 parts of JoJo. And that's part three is considered where the like things actually kind of get solid. I've liked it from the get go, because I read the manga back in the day, like manga like fan translations of like the manga chapters. Um, it's awesome. Like I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but also I understand like it's a weird it's a weird story. Is how I'll put it. It's weird. It's bizarre.
so is there? So for the going back to the game, is the game like a spin-off story,
Yeah, it is.
like
It's
just
like
using these characters kind of thing?
it's like, hey, we're gonna
An
introduce.
Elseworlds kind of thing.
Yeah, we're gonna introduce like what would have happened. It's like a like a Marvel what would have happened if this had happened instead. And the answer is like if Dio hadn't been defeated, he would have completed um his Eyes of Heaven project, which basically would have given him a like godlike stand that would have made him invincible. And so it's essentially the Joestars are trying to gather enough parts of the Holy Corpse to essentially figure out a way to defeat this Dio. And the great thing about it is that you have all the Joestars throughout history helping you out, including so what people don't know a lot is that in part at the end of part six, there's essentially a reboot that's done. Part seven is Johnny Joestar from part seven is Jonathan Joestar, but it's a different take on it, and it's set in the United States rather than Britain, and it's a very different story because of it. In fact, I think as of right now, part seven is technically the longest manga wise. Um, it's very different, very very different. I was not a fan of the reboot. I'm not a big fan of Steel Ball Run, which is what part seven is. I think it's fine though. I think Araki as a writer is brilliant enough to like get through it. I am a fan of JoJolion, which is the part eight, which is the second part that's been in the kind of rebooted universe. But I do think that it has its own struggles. I don't think part seven or eight has matched up to like the pinnacle of the series, which I believe to be like part four, five, and six. So.
Okay. Well,
Oh, anyway, so
as
it's a really cool fighting game. It's essentially it's not like a DBZ Fighters. It's uh, it's much more of a like roaming arena battle fighter. It's really cool. It's just awesome to see some of these characters with some of their stands kind of just like rolling out and fighting. Um, it's just great. So
cool.
it was like $5 on PSN.
Nice. Is it part of that like big in Japan sale that's going on right now?
You know it.
Yep. Speaking of, because I imagine you also got this from there. You mentioned you also dove into Dissidia Final Fantasy NT a little bit. So
Yep.
how's that? Because that one I at least know going in is fighting game. It's Final Fantasy fighting game.
Yep.
Cool.
It's
So,
the same kind of fighting style of game that Eyes Over Heaven is, or Eyes of Heaven is. You have, it's great. I did not know Ramza Belouv was in this, or Ben Belouv. I'm trying to
I always said Beowulf.
Beowulf.
Beowulf, yeah.
Beowulf. It's French, so it'd be
Beve. I don't know.
Beowulf.
Whatever.
I'll ask my little brother. He speaks French. Or I'll ask my great aunt. I'm having dinner with her tonight, so I'll just ask her instead. But yeah, no. Love Ramza that he's in it. That's who I've been maining.
Okay.
Um, because like, why wouldn't I? Like, Ramza's awesome. Uh, they brought in the shoot, what's his name to do the voice. He did the voice in War of the Lions. Um, he
I
also
don't know.
he also voices Samurai Jack. So I'm just looking that up real quick. Uh, Phil Lamar. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Phil Lamar, like also known as like
That is,
yeah,
yeah. Like I mean, like well prolific voice actor. I always think of him as Hermes Conrad from Futurama. Um, he was also on Mad TV for many years. Um, yeah, I never would have pegged him as a Ramza, but okay.
he does a very uh like like soft spoken like soft spoken but at the same time powerful Ramza that is like it's inner is higher like his higher tone of speaking but it's really really good. Um, but Rams is awesome. I actually don't like that they like start you off with the noble Ramza outfit, which I hate. So I spent like 4 hours fighting to get enough gil to unlock his like his mercenary outfit,
Okay.
and gosh, he is so cool. He is so cool. I love like the game is actually really awesome. It's really great to like just play through. One thing I was not a fan of is it's something that I've been seeing a lot happening in fighting games recently, where the story mode is this like separate mode of like cutscenes interlocked instead of actual like in between fights something happening, um, which is annoying to me. But I will say like gameplay wise, it's a fantastic game. It's tons of fun. Um, I've played other characters besides Ramza, but like Ramza is definitely my favorite so far. I usually spend my time with Furion and Cecil. So Furion from Final Fantasy II,
Fantasy two.
and
Yeah.
then Cecil, of course, from Final Fantasy IV. Cecil's
Yep.
awesome because he has a you can have him start off as a paladin or dark knight, and the cool thing about him is that one of his special moves is to job class change, and it's an awesome like he like charges forward and like kind of does a little bit of an explosive damage as he transforms into his other one. Um, it's super cool. He has like two move sets for each style. The paladin uses the lance instead of the sword, but you can of course like change the equipment around. It's awesome.
Very cool. How does it? Did you play the previous Dissidia games on PSP?
I have played the previous Dissidia game. I played the original Dissidia game. It works out real well. Actually think that they designed this one to be a bit more focused on like multiplayer and
Mm-hmm.
focused on like a bit more of like a challenging multiplayer versus just a fighting game. Which I think it has its benefits and its lack of benefit in some places, but it's really good. Like it's great seeing a lot of these characters fleshed out in like really nice quality 3D. Um, like Therion is one of probably like Final Fantasy 2 I think is like heavily underrated as far as games go in the Final Fantasy genre. Um, or Final Fantasy series rather. It's extremely underrated for kind of being like it didn't ever. I don't really feel like it's ever gotten its due, but it is a really cool game, and Furion is a really cool character. Like definitely. If you're interested, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, even if you're not a big fighting game fan, I would say it might be at the right price for you. Because like I was not going to spend like $80 on this game or $60 to $80 on this game for like stuff, but like for $20, yeah, I'll do it. So
Cool. Yeah, it's one that I remember when it got announced. I was like, I'm gonna for the sake of my systems, I'm going to pass on that because I've told this story before, but Dissidia on specifically like Dissidia Duodecim or whatever, because of course it's named weird. The second Dissidia game on PSP is notoriously why I broke my first PSP, because I in a rage because I couldn't defeat Chaos. Like I was like maining as Cloud or whatever, and I just could not defeat Chaos. And so time after time after time, I would just get more and more frustrated, and I would be playing this game in my bed, and I would to like let out my anger and frustration, I would just slam the PSP against the mattress, and at one point I overextended and missed the mattress and hit the box spring of my bed and just
I remember
cracked
the story. Yes.
yeah, cracked the screen of the PSP in like right in the middle. And I was like, well, shit, that was a $300 mistake in or a $300 lesson in like rage and anger management. I eventually picked up another PSP, but yeah, I have basically sworn off Dissidia games because of that anger and frustration. And so, like, I was like, oh, cool, they're making a big 3D one. Not going anywhere near that because that is not a game for me. I'm just going to get mad and angry, and I don't want to throw my PS4 controller through my TV, which is what I imagine would happen if I got angry enough. So, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're having a good time. And like, I love the idea of the Dissidia games. I love, especially because, like, yeah, so many of my, like, the characters that I love from the series do get, like, you know, a spotlight that they don't normally get in Final Fantasy fandom. Not that like the fact that you could like play as Kefka was a ton of fun in that, I remember. And I love as a, you know, Final Fantasy VI stan. And so I'm glad to see that the series is, you know, alive and well. And I'm glad you're enjoying it. So very cool. Couple of fighting games that aren't going to be my cup of tea, but I'm glad you're having a good time with them.
Holy shit.
What?
Trevor, the New York Times got a hold of Donald Trump's tax returns.
Okay.
Sorry, the news came across my phone.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, the absolutely wild. Sorry for especially our non-U.S. Listeners. Anyway, sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, I will dive into that story later on, I'm sure, and see it on Twitter once we're done recording here.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was just absolutely like that. Just awestruck me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I also forgot to mention I've been playing Odin Sphere.
Okay.
I just like.
And what's Odin? What's the gameplay of Odin Sphere?
Odin.
That's one like I know I've seen. Is that more JRPG?
No, it's like a 3D, or it's not 3D. It's a like a shoot. What's the genre called? Side scroller. It's a side scroller, kind of like arcade fighting game. With its combat, okay. It's from Vanillaware. Dragon's Crab people. So.
That means very little to me.
Okay, sorry. I'm like I thought you would know more about that. My apologies. I didn't like.
I mean, like I know the name Vanillaware, especially because it whose game right now is a Vanillaware game that just came out. Is it Genshin Impact? Was that Vanillaware?
Genshin Impact was them. The game that came out recent. No, they're not Vanillaware. Sorry, I was thinking of Muramasa. 13 Sentinels is the one that they just put out.
Oh, 13 Sentinels. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, yeah. I was like, I know I've just recently seen the name Vanillaware. Why have I just recently seen it? And yeah, it was 13 Sentinels. But so Odin Sphere Leifthrasir is you're saying side-scroller fighting game? So you're just doing a full-on fighting game.
Not fighting game. It's a side-scrollering like
beat 'em up?
Beat 'em up, yeah.
Okay.
That's like the combat of it.
You said fighting game,
yeah,
so I was like, I don't know. I guess
yeah.
Given the context of Final Fantasy Dissidia and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you have to like maybe distinguish fighting side scroller versus fighting what those games are doing.
Arena Fighter versus
but I was like, yeah.
side scroller beat 'em up. Yeah. So it focuses. Yeah. That's the combat style, but it's basically like a fun, whimsical telling of like Norse mythology, and like Norse Norse legends. Um, yeah, it's really really cool. Um, it's deep into like Norse mythology stuff. It's the idea is basically like what's really cool is like it has so many different characters, but it all is telling around like the same story. Like there's this like it's different perspectives of a same period of time, and there's a meta story of a girl named Alice who's actually just reading the book, like reading books. And so each character's game, or each character's story rather, is one of the books that she's reading. So you finish a book and then you move on to the next character. Um, it's really good. Uh, it's like fantastical and fun. Combat wise, fighting wise, it's awesome. Uh, like I've really enjoyed the game before. I'm just kind of going back through it again, and that was just kind of in coincidence because like 13 Sentinels apparently is super good, and I didn't even realize it had come out. So, and if you want to know what 13 Sentinels is, it's an RTS mech game, like anime mech game. So why am I not playing it? And I'll tell you why, because I'm unemployed, and it's $60.
Yeah, I heard Britt Brombacher on What's Good talking about 13 Sentinels this week, and the detail that she mentioned that stuck with me is the kids in these mech suits, they get naked to get into the mech suits.
Oh, I did not
and
know
I'm like,
that.
that seems inappropriate and like okay, but also highly Japanese, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it was like that's weird. Okay, whatever. Guess you need room to breathe in those mech suits. Yeah. Um, it's one of those games I don't envision I'll be hopping into, but I'm glad it's finding a little audience here stateside. So very cool. I'm glad you're finding some enjoyment out of these games that you're able to grab on discount here. Last little thing I have on my side of things is, as I said, as I've continued playing Marvel's Avengers and stuff, I've basically just been like binging random shows and stuff. And New Girl is the latest one that caught my eye on Netflix because I really enjoyed New Girl back when it was airing and I was watching it like as a week to week kind of show. So I was like, let me go revisit that show. About like a season and a half in, probably almost near the end of season 2 at this point already. And it's just like fun. I really just enjoy that group of characters. That was certainly what introduced me to like I watched that show originally because I had a crush on Zooey Deschanel, so I was like, yeah, I'll check that out.
Like every
Also
boy
weird,
in the aughts.
yeah, every boy that ever saw 500 Days of Summer. I weirdly the show or the creator of that show, I want to say Elizabeth Merriweather, I believe is her name. She also, I remember around the time that New Girl was coming out, I had just done and been in a production here in town of a play called Hedatron, written by her, and it was basically like a weird mashup of the story of Hedda Gabler and that like play by Ibsen, I believe, and like AI approaching the singularity. Like my character in that play I was basically like a roboticist or something, like a scientist talking about the singularity, and it was a whole bunch of like talking heads videos that we filmed that like showed and played throughout the play. I would just kind of come up on the big screen and kind of like do tell the sciencey stuff behind these robots that came in and abducted a mom and basically wanted to force her to perform out Hedda Gabler with them. It was a very weird show. The other highlight is that there was a musical number at the end of like the first act or something that was basically like all of the robots doing and singing and dancing to Total Eclipse of the Heart. And when I say robots, I'm not talking like, oh, we had like actors dressed up as robots. It's like, no, we actually like hired a robotics team from like one of the local like community colleges and and they built robots for us that came in like very, very hot. Like we finally got the robots and got to play with them tech week of the show. And prior to that, because I was also like the assistant stage manager on the show, I was being all of the robots. Like I was being the stand-in for all the robots on stage. And so my favorite memories of that show were when I would go out there and do basically this ballet of playing as 5 different robots. And by that I mean like I was taking like giant props that we had to stand in as the robots. So like I was moving around an oscillating fan and a broom and a briefcase and like a couple other like stand up items or something. And I was basically like moving them and doing their blocking while we were singing and playing Total Eclipse of the Heart. And I was also like doing their voices in like robot. So it was like turn around, bright eyes, every now and then I fall apart. And it was a wild experience. I remember very little else from that show, but I remember we had a ton of fun with it. And the fact that the person who like came up with all that nonsense also came up with New Girl just blew my mind. But I really enjoyed New Girl as a series. It introduced me to Jake Johnson, who I've been a fan of since. Obviously, he's in my favorite or one of my favorite movies of all time in Into the Spider-Verse as Peter B. Parker. And yeah, I'm just enjoying kind of revisiting that show and those characters. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. You ever watch New Girl, Cam?
Listen, unlike the rest of you bozos, I picked up on what Zoe Deschanel was laying down, which was heartbreak. Like, I'm joking. No, so New Girl, like I had watched it like the first couple episodes of New Girl, and I was talking to a coworker of mine this is when I worked at PayPal, and he goes, "Listen," he goes, "I'm not interested in the show you're talking about because all it sounds like is like Zoe Deschanel just like the premise of the show is it's just Zoe Deschanel just being quirky as fuck."
Yeah, that was definitely like the selling point. Like there was a whole campaign around her being adorkable. And
yeah, I was not about that. That like there was a time and place where uh being weird or quirky was like a like people were trying to push this idea that like the girl's being quirky. It's like no, like a lot of times it's just like it's covering up social ineptitude with branding that then you then try to sell as like a point of attraction, and what you end up getting is people who like, oh, I like her, she's so quirky, she's like Zoe Deschanel. It's like okay, and then they later complain about like we have these communication problems in our relationship, and I'm like, yeah, no duh.
yeah,
Like these are things to overcome for your relationships with people. You shouldn't be defining your romantic interest off of what is at its core essential problem, like or core at their core essential problems in a good relationship, which is a lot of quirkiness comes from not being able to communicate something across the right way, and like having like especially when girls started to like try to be quirky and it just came off super cringy, or like it was just there was a frustrating time that I saw especially a lot of my female friends like fall into this like idea of like, oh, I should be like this because that's what guys want, and it's like, no, like you're a really brilliant, positive, wonderful person. You shouldn't be this. You shouldn't be trying to do this. Like that being said, there's been a lot of like fun clips coming out of New Girl, especially on like fun audios off of like TikTok and stuff. So, like shout out to that. Like it's I watched a video essay about how New Girl kind of is a millennial like a millennial touchstone show in the same way that a lot of like Friends was for Gen Xers.
mm-hmm.
Because it's a show about these people who are uh, kind of failing at trying to figure out life, and then they finally start figuring it out, and then it works out for them.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
yeah,
that's I think that's a pretty good like they're the characters have like differing levels of success, but they're they are just trying to figure life out, and they're it is very much like a they're in their 30s, they're 30 somethings trying to figure out what it means to be an adult kind of thing,
I think you mean 20
and especially
somethings.
as I mean, well, like, no, like Jake Johnson's character, at least, like right out the gate, is like he's 30. Maybe Jess is a little bit younger, so maybe it's like late
Yeah,
20s, early 30s.
it's a show about people in their late 20s entering their 30s, and like because Jake Johnson's character is very much of somebody who, despite being the oldest member of a group, he is the most immature.
Yeah,
Um,
but he's also, I mean, like the other guys in the show, Schmidt and Winston, are his same age. Like Winston and Nick have known each other their whole lives. Schmidt and Nick knew each other since college. Like they were roommates in college, and that's how they became friends. So Jess is probably the youngest of the bunch coming into it, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're all pretty much, at least by the end of like the the first season, they're all in their 30s, or those three are in their 30s at least.
yeah,
Um,
but
so
yeah,
yeah,
it's a show about transitioning from being in your late 20s to your early 30s,
yeah,
which maybe because
it's
like the
and
show came,
which is
yeah,
probably what resonated with me, or because I was probably like what mid 20s, like I was post college when this show was really like coming into its own, and so like as I was trying to figure things out, because yeah, this is a show that basically existed in like at the beginning of the recession,
yeah.
the last recession, and so everybody was feeling like Nick Miller, who's a down on his luck bartender kind of character in that show, and
Yeah,
trying to figure things out. So yeah, it makes sense as a like a quote unquote millennial touchstone show. And as somebody who myself never got into Friends or Seinfeld or something like that, it is my jam was much more like on the NBC side of things in The Office and Parks and Rec, probably in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But I like New Girl was one that I like watched every week, there for a number of years. I probably fell off, in a couple of the later seasons, but it's fun just kind of revisiting and like as I hit like certain episodes, remembering and just having like memories flood back of like what's going to happen in this episode, and some of the guest stars they bring in is just a lot of fun. Like they had
Prince, man.
Jamie Lee Curtis and Rob Reiner came in as Jess's parents in an episode, a few episodes back from where I am now, and that was just a fun delight.
Prince was
So
a guest star.
yeah, huh?
Prince was a guest star.
Who was
Prince.
Prince?
Yeah,
Was Prince guest star?
yeah. Prince is literally the most famous cameo in that show because Prince never cameoed in anything.
Yeah, I guess I'm remembering that, but I'm like I feel like I'm remembering it as like because I'm trying to remember like when Prince passed and all that stuff, and so I guess it must have happened before that, but yeah, I have not gotten to that episode, but yeah, I guess I'm vaguely remembering that was a thing that happened in the show, but yeah, so New Girl, checking that out, enjoying just kind of like having that on the background while I play other things and stuff. So yeah, that's I think
Nice.
gonna do it for this week's episode of the show. Thank you, Cam, for sitting down with me after we both woke up from our like early afternoon naps or whatever to sit down and chat about stuff. You can follow Cam at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a plug or a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, if you're a Patreon supporter, check out this upcoming month's, like end of September's, uh, special episode for that Nerdy Site show. We do a PlayStation 4 games bracket, and it goes in some interesting places. Uh,
Yeah.
RN Jesus himself makes some special appearances,
Mm-hmm.
and you like it turned out to be like now did certain people vote for a tie just so we could go to RNGesus in some cases? You know it.
Of course you did.
Yeah, you know it.
And by certain people, you mean only you.
No, Frank did it too.
I don't think he did.
At one point he did, for sure.
I don't think so. I think you were the one that like proudly touted at some point. All right, we're sending this to RNGesus. I vote for blah blah blah.
Well, now listen, did I also do dice chants? Yes, I did. Dice, dice, dice,
Yes.
dice. Anyway, it's an excellent time. It's such a fun time. We had a great blast doing it. It's 4.5 hours long, so
Yeah.
like,
Strap in. You have all month to listen to
yeah,
it.
it's an absolute blast. Such a good time. But I will say that massive shout out to Brandon Gann for being a part of it with us. Yeah, nothing but love for that guy. Nothing but it was a fantastic episode. So shout out to that. Check it out. Or if you want, you can wait till October and wait for it to come out for free. So.
Yep. Yeah, I will. You can follow me at Trevor J Starkey. I will echo that shout out. I definitely think it's worth the $1, and that's I'm gonna like try and like pitch it as like, hey, join our Patreon for $1 for this episode, so you can catch it now. But yeah, worst case scenario, that'll go up the end of October. And we basically timed it as such, so it'll go out to the public just in time for the PS5 launch. So. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. Definitely went longer than I was anticipating, and we obviously had to we kind of had to like adjust things on the fly a little bit because Logan was supposed to join us, but had a scheduling snafu and did not. And I didn't realize until I was going back and looking at the edit, the overlay that I had like built out for the video component of it. Still has his plugs in there. And I was like, well, oops. I'm not gonna try and like remove that at this point. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. And it would have just been even longer if he had joined us. So I'm kind of ultimately glad that it did just end up being the four of us. But yeah, it's me, Cam, Frank, and then special guest Brandon Gann, who was basically brought in to be a tiebreaker if we needed one, so we didn't have any 2-2 splits. And when Logan wasn't able to join us, we were like, well, crap, 2-2 splits are going to happen, so how are we going to solve those? And we ultimately went to Google Dice to play RNGesus and break those ties. So yeah, some chaos gets thrown into our bracket a little bit here and there as a result of that, but it was a ton of fun.
What's a good sports bracket without a little bit of chaos?
Exactly, yeah. And it was already going to be chaos because you were a part of it as well, Cam.
That is true.
So yeah, thank you again to Brandon for sitting down with us and doing that. And definitely worth checking out if you have $1 to spend on our Patreon here. That'll go live to all of our patrons end of September, and then it'll go live to everybody end of October. So yeah. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, and you can check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest podcasts and content from us. If you liked what you heard, please, once again, rate, review, like, subscribe, and maybe even consider supporting us over there on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where you get early access to episodes like our upcoming bracket one. Thank you again for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.